Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Lucky Few podcast, where we are shifting the narrative by shouting the worth of people with Down syndrome. This is Micah,
Mercedes,
and Heather.
And today we are back on with Sarathy, who is our expert in all things functional nutrition and in talking about intelligence for our kids with Down syndrome. And we're really excited to have a conversation today with her about assuming competence and assuming intelligence in our kids. This is going to be a great episode. And I also want to say that if you haven't heard the first part of our interview with her, jump back to last week and listen to us in our conversation about functional nutrition. Thank you for joining us, friends. Welcome to the Lucky Few podcast.
Heather here, and I'm excited to share more with you about Jonas Paul Eyewear, this episode's sponsor. Jonas Paul Eyewear was founded by Ben and Laura Harrison when their son Jonas was born nearly blind at birth. This was extremely unexpected news that no parent prepares for, but it gave them a window into the world of blindness. Ben and Laura could have let Jonas's visual impairments dampen their spirits, but instead, they used this new challenge as fuel to launch Jonas Paul Eyewear, which now specializes in glasses for kids and teens ages 4 to 16 years old. Jonas Paul is on a mission to help kids feel beautiful and confident in their glasses. All you have to do is head to jonaspauleyewear.com to learn more and order your home try-on kit for just $1. Make sure you use code TheLuckyFew15 at checkout for 15% off any future orders.
Okay, everybody. Hi.
Hi, Micah. Hi, Mercedes.
Hi.
hello.
How's
Hello.
everybody doing?
Great.
Good.
So well nourished after our last.
I know, right? So as I said in the introduction, last week we talked with Sarathy about functional nutrition and about where to even start with our kids, if it makes sense to change their diet, what that even looks like. And I'm wondering if you guys had any takeaways from that conversation.
I felt like, and I wanted to say this during that conversation, that I know in the past, I felt like I had to be a complete granola mom to do that kind of a thing. And slowly learning, like, that's not it. You don't have to go extreme, but you can try things out. And I feel like even trusting your doctor is important, but also trusting your gut and knowing, trusting your gut health is important, but trusting your gut that there's also other options out there, and to take some time to look to alternative ideas and practices and steps for health for your child and for yourself, but especially for your child with a different ability.
Yeah, I felt from the conversation super motivated to implement more of that anti-inflammatory diet, or to figure out what works best for my kids and our family. And I know with Macy especially, there is something like that, like when she was talking about noticing energy. At one point she talked about, like you notice, are your kids bloated? Are they constipated? But also kind of what I heard her say is something about are they presenting as some best selves? And Mason it dips in her blood sugar. That's what it was. Mason has dips all the time. And I really do believe in the power of food, and that, it was created to sustain us and to make us well in our best selves. And I don't think anyone can argue that. As Americans especially, we abuse food. I'm just going to say it. Or we let food abuse us. It's like it's no new thing to hear. I've done all kinds of like Whole30 or I've done keto. Like I've done all these different things, or we've like had grains out of our diet. We've done no dairy, we've done no gluten, we've cut sugar out. We do these things. So there's a part of me that, like, I know that when we don't eat sugar, we function better, not at our best selves, and then it's like, but I really just want to eat a cookie. And I think that that's okay too, but to know that when we take sugar out of our diet, we feel better. So do the thing that makes us feel better as a family, but then also there's more that I can be doing for Mason and August to help them be their best selves. Just take that fog away. I see that fog in Macy, and I think going into junior high especially, what can we do to help her present as her best self and feel good in her body so that she can have a great day in 6th grade?
Yeah.
You know,
I think I feel like what both of you guys are saying, I think we do kind of go to something like this and think we have to go all in, or, like I'm on a couple of Facebook groups that are about anti-inflammatory diets, and it feels a little bit like for these moms on the Facebook group with me, like this is everything. This is all that they do, or like this is the end goal. Right. And I really appreciated how Vaish was talking about like this, the end goal is your child being their best self and feeling healthy. But it's sort of our American culture of like, you go hard or you go home when it
Totally.
What are
comes
you
to
about? What are you
right,
about?
like,
you know,
you do keto and you do keto hard for a month,
Right.
and then you're like, you eat a cookie and then it's all over.
It's over.
You're off ketosis. Now I only eat cookies.
Yeah,
exactly. So I love the idea of being like, yeah, we're just gonna live a healthier lifestyle for our whole family, for ourselves, and the goal being our best, and the goal not being like becoming granola people, like you were saying.
Right.
Crunchy moms.
So I'm excited to bring her back in today. And, we talked about last week how she has a podcast that I've gotten so much out of as I've been kind of going, speaking of go hard or go home, I was like, listened to about 10 episodes in 1 week, a couple of weeks ago. But what we didn't really talk about much last week is how Dr. Sarathy has a TEDx talk. And this TEDx talk is amazing. It's about 12 minutes long. And I immediately sent it to my parents, and they both watched it and were so excited to talk to me more about it. And in her TEDx talk, she's talking about assuming intelligence, assuming competence. And I want us to talk a little bit more about that this week. And if we dip back into the functional nutrition, that's great. But I know that this is a major passion of Vaish Sarathy's, and also because of what she has seen come out of her son Sid as she has taught him, and what he's been able to accomplish even as a person who doesn't speak. And so we are so excited to welcome you back to the show this week, Dr. Sarathy, or Vaish, or we'll call you both things. And thank you for being here with us. And we can't wait to hear more about what you have to say about assuming intelligence in our kids.
Thank you. And my heart is so full just listening to all of you, speak. So thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
We're excited to have you.
Yes, very much.
I'm excited to talk about the educational part and about assuming competency, because I feel, and I know Micah feels the same. Sunflower, my daughter, who is 7 now, has limited speech, but you can talk to her and you can ask her anything, and she listens and understands. Listens, yeah, here and there, behavior, if she wants to, but she understands everything. But I feel like her lack of words make her out in the world seem like she is not understanding. It makes it seem like she is less intelligent just because she can't speak. So this is a conversation I'm super excited about. Also, as you being a homeschool mom, I've also decided at this point for alternative education for Sunflower, and I've seen really great results. So I love that we get a chance to talk to you more about this. So with that said, I just wanted to know and ask a little bit more about what education has been like for your son with the dual diagnosis. And we read on your website that his teachers stated he was one of the most intellectually disabled kids they had worked with. And what was that like for you to hear, and how did that impact the way that you educated him?
It was a little shocking to hear, but it was also something that I'd been expecting because it was getting very obvious. And something that I often say is that, he wasn't really responding to anything. He wasn't responding to his name. He wasn't responding. I mean, like, he would do therapies where therapists would put colors and say point to red, and he wouldn't point. And he wouldn't really, there was really nothing. And we would speak in louder voices and slower voices, which, I just hate even thinking about that, but there was just like very limited response. And, coming from a background where I had always been encouraged by my parents and my relatives and everybody. So as, to consider myself very smart, right? So it wasn't something I could easily get into. So that intelligence is not there. So I feel like I'm talking about a couple of different things at the same time, but I actually, before I get started, I want to give credit to the idea of assumption of competence is not new. So I just want people who are listening to know that since the 80s or maybe the 70s, there's educators that have spoken about this. There's this remarkable educator called Cheryl Jorgensen. And if she's been speaking about the value of assuming competence in all kids, but especially kids with Down syndrome, so look her up. And there's also a lady called Anne Donnellan who spoke about something called the least dangerous assumption, which is assuming competence, right? It's the least dangerous assumption, but we'll come to that later. So talking about Sid, I was exposed to the ideas of Glenn Doman, who used to, I don't know if you've heard about him, but there's this whole, kind of school of thought where you flash cards and you flash alphabets and so on. But the one thing that really stuck with me when I learned about the work of Glenn Doman was that input is important and output isn't important. So that one thing really, kind of stuck in my mind for some reason. And I wasn't getting any output, like nothing, even no eye contact, no gestures, no signs. His motor was so bad, still is so bad that he can't even sign more. So there's like nothing. So I just decided what I have control over is my input. And I kept giving input. And Glenn Doman also had said somewhere that don't stay in the same input for too long. So I would flash number cards at him. I would read him stuff. I would put videos where there was language on. And then I did get stuck in numbers for too long. And then I realized that Sid was looking at them before and he'd stopped looking. So I decided to move on to showing him addition facts. And I just kept this is all without response, except that he would start looking at them. It's like, okay, he's looking at least. Mm-hmm. And like I would make these big flashcards and show him stuff about addition. Then he stopped looking. And I said, okay, what was happening in school was that when he stopped responding to things, they would go backward. But I, for some reason, felt that I think we should go forward. So then we did multiplication, then we did exponents. By that time, when he was 6, I got exposed to the work of Soma Mukhopadhyay, who's this, who works with non-speaking autistics and who works with letterboard communication methods. So actually it's an academic method. It's not a communication method, but we use it now for communication. But she helps children point on the letterboard. And so I had just read her book. I hadn't even worked with her. So one fine day, I think, I remember what this was for. So he was supposed to enroll in an online school and they required him to take a multiple choice test. And I was like, this is ridiculous. My son doesn't know anything. How on earth is he going to give a second grade multiple choice test? He probably doesn't even know what the difference between 2 and 4 is. They said, just give it to him. So I did. So it was a pattern recognition question. There were 4 different like dots and triangles. And then what is the 4th pattern? So it's just like these things that keep progressing. And I cut out the 4 choices and put them in front of him. He couldn't point, by the way. He would just, and I just said, just show me where it is. Okay, show me what the 4th one. It's a pretty complex problem. Well, 2nd grade complex, okay? Mm-hmm. Or maybe, second grade. He batted at the right choice. Now I think, and of course I was mind blown and all that, but it was so tempting to look at this as fluke, right? Okay, 1 out of 4, 25% he's going to get it right anyway. But I think the fact that I didn't made all the difference in the world. So I feel like when your child tells you an answer, or gives you a response that you're expecting, and we're so encouraged that, let's try to get this 3 times. This is what they do in school, because you need to give me the right answer 3 times. Why on earth should I give you the right answer 3 times? I gave it to you once. If you don't believe me, I'm not giving it to you again. I feel like that's what's going on in the mind of a child.
Interesting.
So, that was in my son. So he actually, in first grade, he had, I think, pointed to the alphabets or something like that. And his teacher was thrilled and she asked him to do it thrice. He didn't do it again. And then he just zoned out. That was it. So I never ask for actually nowadays I do, but those days I never asked for repetition. I just kept going. And just by batting at the right answer, this is how our education progressed with Sid. So for years, he would just bat at the answer. Eventually, he learned to point. Eventually, 5 years of work on the letterboard, and now he can see. The thing is that he always knew how to spell. It's just that all we were working on is motor skills, and that is the crux of everything I'm saying, is that the window to a person's intelligence is imperfect. We don't have a window.
Right.
Our window is speech. Speech is imperfect. I read a statistic somewhere that 98% of kids with Down syndrome have apraxia. They don't have perfect control over their speech. What is the second window? Gestures. Okay. Signs. Signs are fine motor. Speech is fine motor. Okay. Eye contact even is fine motor. Okay. So what do you have? You don't have anything. So you don't have anything that you can realize. So how are we making the assumption based on these imperfect modes of communication that we know don't work well with most of our kids, that this child is not intelligent? So if you look at children that are, I know many kids with Down syndrome with speech, but they're really struggling to bring changes in their speech. They're often saying the same things again and again. Right. So I know that people will think that they really don't know how to say anything different. But how are we making these connections? I was very lucky, or Sid and I were very lucky that Sid was non-speaking and had no means of communication. So we were pushed into a corner to find that one thing that would work. Okay. So we had nothing else to do. And through that one thing, because now when he was pointing, he was using gross motor. This is how he goes.
Right.
There's no fine motor. And we know that fine motor is harder than gross motor for most kids. Small movements are hard. And for him, they're like 100 times hard because of his low muscle tone. Being pushed in, and many kids are not necessarily pushed into that. If Sid was speaking, I would not be here. If Sid had any speech, I would not be here, because I'd be like, oh, that's what he means. Oh, that's all he can say.
Right.
But I think like that spills into so many things. The fact that we're using motor as a means of assessing intelligence, and motor skills are imperfect. The biggest thing I have to say is that you have no idea how smart your kid is. So why not just assume that they are, right? I mean, like, that is where we come into the idea of least dangerous assumption. So I have a friend with her daughter was also dual diagnosis and non-speaking, and the child was taught to count to 13 until the age of 13, because she wouldn't give any indication that she knew her numbers. Now, what if you had taught, anyway, according to you, she didn't learn her numbers. So what if you just taught space science instead? So anyway, she was not learning beyond 13. You have not accomplished anything by teaching her 13. So just ditch the numbers. Why do you have to teach numbers if they're not learning? What would have changed in that child's life if you decided, I'm just saying space science. It doesn't have to be space science. It could be pottery. It could be anything. It's just that's on top of my mind because I feel like it's more shocking. So I say that, but it could be anything. But because those are things that, in my son's special ed class, when he was going to school until he was in 5th grade, there was a science project going on for the whole school, and they distributed flyers in every classroom but his. So I had been waiting for that science project because Sid wanted to do a project on extraterrestrial life. And I had no idea. So then I started writing to the school office, and I found out that flyers had been sent. Every classroom got invitation to present. And in fact, I think it was required that particular school actually required all students to do something. But they didn't even think that this classroom of kids would have anything that they would even want that. So assumption of intelligence, I keep saying this, but assumption of intelligence brings respect. And that intelligence does not have to be on display. We're waiting for a display of intelligence, and that has nothing to do with an assumption of intelligence. The child is not going to display the intelligence until you assume it. Well, maybe they will, but in most cases, when children are very limited, it's ridiculously boring to listen to people saying the same things over and over again, trying to teach you numbers in the alphabet until you're 15.
Right.
I wouldn't respond to a teacher if they were talking to me like that.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'll stop here. But
this is so powerful and so am thinking to myself how many times I have done the same exact like ABCs with ACE and the same way of going through numbers and never thought to go further because I'm waiting for him to show me his competence instead of me making that assumption and jumping ahead. I love that. It's so incredible to think about. What were you going to say, Mercedes?
I was a little bit kind of piggybacking what you're saying, Micah. I love that. I think as parents, we get to see past the blocks. So like a teacher would look at Sid, and if he lost interest and started looking somewhere else from flashcards, I guess what you're saying is that they assume that, okay, he's not getting it. Okay, let's start from square one. But there's so much going on in there where you saw it as like, okay, he's bored now. Let's go up further. Let's challenge him more, or let's show something new. I just think that's such a beautiful approach to disinterest, like not going backwards, seeing what else is involved. Because I feel like to our kids with different abilities, especially with Down syndrome, they have to take into account feelings. Are they feeling like they're being treated smart? Are they feeling like they're being treated like they're being heard? I know Sunflower is very sensitive to that. So I could see how that approach, which I really would like to adopt, would make her feel even more respected, even more engaged, to feel like, okay, if you're not wanting to write your name, like, and she writes her name, but as soon as she writes her name, like she'll write SUNNY in her own way, but it will still be all those letters, but it looks just a little bit off. If I go to correct it, like she knows I'm approaching, I'm like, okay, Sunny. And she's like, nope, like you're not going to correct it. But if I say, great job, Sunny, you wrote SUNNY, she feels heard, she feels seen. And every once in a while, it really does look like an SUNNY. Like, I feel like from what you're saying and from what I've learned, even from Terry Brown, who we've talked about, encouragement and moving forward and learning and time and more learning and acknowledgement and positive reinforcement, I feel like have done wonders for me, even with teaching my son Rhodes, who's neurotypical. It's a great thing to adopt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It makes me think, I've talked about this on the podcast before a little bit, but I have these big regrets that I don't harbor them, friends. I feel like I'm in a healthy space with it, but where I can look back with Macy being really little, where I didn't assume she could do something, so I didn't even try. I would love actually to hear your opinion on this, Vaish, about errorless learning. Is that something that's familiar to you?
No.
Okay. So this idea that she can't be wrong. So I think it kind of goes with what you're saying, but I don't want to assume that right now. So, and Mrs. Brown, we've had a woman named Terry Brown on before, who I think teaches this way, where if I present information to Mason when she was little in a way that she's not wrong, so it's completely counter to how we teach kids. So you're not going to hold up an A and say, what's this? You're just going to hold up an A and say A, B, and eventually they get it. There's no testing. Teach, don't test. Errorless learning, that your kid can't get it wrong because of the way in which you're presenting the information, and therefore it builds up confidence. And I have found with my kids with Down syndrome, the thing that keeps them from wanting to engage in any kind of learning that is taking place, like with us at a table or at school, is a lack of confidence because of the I think the mistakes in which I started when they were little, and then also the way that the school system works, right? Like the way that this is how you learn. And if you step into the school system with this title of intellectual disability, and there's this assuming that they can't or won't do things the way that neurotypical kids are doing, then right away they feel like they've failed. And so when they hold up the letter A, even if my son knows the letter A, he's going to be like, shrug his shoulders, like, I'm not even going to try because I just keep failing.
And I think what you said about teach, don't test is hugely important.
Totally.
How does that go along with intellectual or assuming intelligence? Do you see the teach, don't test?
It goes along with the fact that, especially when you have not found a communication technique that works well for your child, and it's work in progress, right? People take different amounts of time to find what works for them. How are you going to test? Because if you test, you're already setting up your child for failure. So the very act of testing assumes that you have a means of response. And I'm going to say that a huge majority of us, we don't have a reliable means of response. Maybe, especially because response is a motor skill. I think it all comes back to the same thing. And so input is hugely more important than output, because input builds connections in the brain. It doesn't matter, right, whether your child is able to give you we don't even know what the right answer should be, right? Even we don't know. We just have a concept of what the right answer should be. So we can give information. We don't have to build concepts in our children's minds. So we can let them use the information however they want. We're all for neurodiversity, right? So I think we should encourage, by doing this, I think it automatically encourages them to use that information as they see fit and however they want. When you have a reliable means of communication, which is tricky because it's not often what we think it is, then perhaps if you're really invested in the school system, you can go into testing. Yeah, and that worked for me for a little while until my son refused to get into that. So right now, for example, we were doing in my Tedx talk just last year, I talked a lot about how he was going from binary to decimals, and he was really interested in math, and then he just decided that it had no use in his life. So now he's just refusing to do any math. So just done. So there's no testing, there's nothing I can do. So in fact, all his answers right now come out as poetry. So I can't get a straight answer from him. So which means that it's automatically beyond the realm of right and wrong, because if you're giving me a poem as an answer to a question, for example, we'll see other TED Talks and we'll say, can you summarize this? And he'll write a poem about it. And then what can I say then? So I'm pretty much forced into that situation right now where I just don't have, he won't agree to being tested. So which means that I'm going to have to homeschool for some more time at least, but we'll see where
What an artist. I feel like that's such an artist personality to do that. I'm only going to talk to you in poetry. So sorry. I love it. Sid.
I feel like that kind of brings us into the question of asking you a little more about what you're doing for his education. He was, you said, in a school setting until 5th grade, and then you've been homeschooling since then. Can you tell us a little bit about how you made that decision and how you have organized his homeschooling, how you know what to teach him, and if you follow a curriculum or if you're just letting him do poetry in response to it,
It's kind of like that. So he did start going to 6th grade. When was it? He's going to 8th, he should be going to 8th grade this year. So I guess it was a couple of years ago to a school, but he didn't fit into that system because he refused to communicate with them. So he's kind of like his own person, right? So, and learning to communicate with him is a skill. It takes time. And he was just miserable. He was miserable. He just didn't want to be there. So I pulled him out. We did conventional education. So it works that I'm a tutor, right? So I teach stuff. So that part was okay for me. So we did science, we did math, we did all of that. And we would listen to he has a lot of visual issues, so he can't visually track. So we do Audible a lot. So a lot of audiobooks. So we would listen to audiobooks all the time. And yeah, so we tried to have a structure. It neither works for me nor for my son. So, and eventually, like I said, the math dropped out. And right now he has poetry lessons from like a published poet who works with him. And that's basically it. So I try to, I'm trying to expose him to other stuff. It's very skewed. His education is very skewed because I can see him blanking out when I do other stuff. So he learns he actually really likes space science. So he learns space science and poetry. I'm trying to bring in the other stuff a little bit. He likes to listen to TED Talks and opinions, so he listened to that. But he's not going to sit and when I give him, the history of the Indus Valley or something like that. Yeah, that's not. So I've kind of understood that it's like we're really at the edge of neurodiversity where I don't know how this is going to build up into a regular school and a college education, which was my dream. When he was doing this fantastic math, I was like, yes, we're going to go to college. Yes, we're going to get out with a degree. And I don't know how that's going to be, but I'm fine with that.
Mm. I love that. I don't know how that's going to be, but I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is some words to live by. Let's go to reading comprehension. So I'm going to throw a scenario at you, which may or may not be real life. It is. It's Macy.
Okay.
Macy is going into 6th grade, and she has probably, at one point, she probably had 125 sight words, not necessarily in order. Some of her sight words would be like Target, Costco, Amazon, like the, things that, or words that she enjoys, hip hop, dance, all those kinds of words, but also and so she had about 125. That's decreased. I feel like we've hit this plateau where there are certain books that she can read that are, I see the, or this is the, or, those kinds of books. And that's where we're at. And she's frustrated. I'm frustrated. I can't figure out how to get past. So then as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, is it like, okay, now we introduce larger words, or is it not about the reading? Like, what's your take on that?
Okay. And please tell me if my
Yes.
take doesn't make sense. Okay. Because anyway, so here's the thing. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but
yes, I like it.
It starts with this. Vision is made of, like, there's 3 components. Okay. So, and one of the acuity, which is what it's your glasses and, how well you're seeing stuff. Okay. Which is really most of what is addressed in our kids. They'll put glasses on and we've addressed acuity. There's what's called ocular motor, which is the ability to move your eye muscles with precision. And that is not addressed in a regular ophthalmologist. That's like vision therapy and stuff like that. And like, for example, my son has major issues in ocular motor. And the third component is visual processing, which is what is your brain doing with the input they're getting. And so let's assume that acuity is taken care of, because that's like the low-hanging fruit. Everybody takes care of acuity. We don't know when you say that a child doesn't understand a book, we don't know where the issue is. Is it that they can't? Is it the scrolling of the eyes that's difficult? Are they getting hung up on a word? Is the motor planning of the eye getting in the way? I mean, it's a fine motor act reading a book. And is it too much to ask them to comprehend the book while reading it? I'm not saying it shouldn't be a goal. I'm saying that it can get in the way. So one thing that I really like doing is like adding another mode of input. So let's say you're reading a book. How about listening to that same book on audio as well? And then let's see, like, you can do it together, or you can just listen to the book on audio. So if you're actually working on reading comprehension, that's one thing. I'm not an expert on teaching reading comprehension by any means, but I find that this falls in the gaps. So nobody talks about this. The fact that your eyes may be getting stuck and so on, right? Wow. So I'm a fan of multimodal inputs. So I think that either someone else reading the book for you, and you are like, there's a pressure taken off, right? Now I can just like relax, and then I can look at bigger words and I can just follow, instead of like, I need to get the word right, I need to understand it and all of that. So I'm a huge fan of audiobooks. The second thing that I think that what we think is reading comprehension issue may be a visual issue. So there are people that are better than me that talk about visual processing, about how your brain understands visual input. I'm not an expert on that, but I would always go to the motor first. So my whole thing is that we misunderstand motor is everything, right? And so many of our kids have issues with motor skills. Fine motor is an issue. We have apraxia as an issue. So let's stay there first before jumping. So this is where you assume competence, that maybe it's not about understanding. Maybe it's something even before that. So the second thing is that what I see happening a lot with both kids with Down syndrome and autism is that because there's so-called reading comprehension issues, the child's reading a book and they're maybe not getting anywhere with it or not understanding it. So you're constantly giving a book of the same level, right? So What do they call them? Like Jack and Jane books or something. There's some. Yeah. So the kid's growing, but so how that gets in the way of giving complex input to our kids, because we want to do that. So one hack around that is to let the reading be a separate activity, and then give the input maybe through audio, and like give increasing complexity, like whatever it is for your child, whatever that's age appropriate for your child. So just let's keep moving on. Let's not get hung up on reading comprehension. Right. That's my view. Okay. So that's, I know it's probably different from everybody else's, but that's my view, that's because otherwise we're just going to read the same type of book forever. So let's move on.
Right. Yeah. I really love that. with homeschool, I've been able, it doesn't completely work for Sunny, but kind of do a education based on like Charlotte Mason a little bit, who does a lot of learning through literature.
Mhm.
And for Sunflower, who can't recite a book back to me or can't really say, oh, this character did this and this. But what I see her do is be engaged with me reading out loud to her a chapter book and then mimicking that. And also then reading her own books that she can read successfully. So at first I was like, okay, I'm going to start reading chapter books to my kids, and they're kind of running around and they're kind of, I'm like, are they even listening? But Rhodes can tell me what's going on. Like in the book, even though I thought he was doing somersaults over there and not even paying attention. Sunflower would be drawing at the same time while I'm reading out loud, and she will show me signs that she's still listening. And I have felt that taking that approach has made, because I'm actually not a natural reader. I don't prefer it. Show me the movie, please, instead. But I have seen that I think how I was taught how to read, it was vigorous, it was hard. My mom had an accent, so her teaching me how to read was interesting because Spanish was her first language, and it felt like reading I wasn't successful at. But I feel like if I was exposed to more of reading out loud, seeing my mom read, or having a less pressure situation, I could have adopted that feeling. And I'm happy to have been shown that so that I can hopefully create that tone for Sunflower. And so far right now, she really loves to read. She likes to do her homework or her happy sheets. And I just hope we can continue that. But I know once I start testing, once I get tired and I start testing and I want to see where she's at, it goes out the door a little bit. So.
Yeah. In your TED Talk, I would love to touch on this before we have to end our conversation, but you talk about appearance and how appearance has become a measure for society, essentially, and for education. Will you talk about that in terms of measuring intellect? Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's obviously kind of unfortunate, but like for whatever reason, people seem to be stuck on the fact that there's a tongue sticking out of the mouth. I think that is some sort of a subconscious measure of intelligence for so many people. So at the beginning of my TED Talk, I kind of said it. I asked the audience, I showed a picture of Sid to my audience, and I was basically challenging the norms of how people look at a kid with Down syndrome. And I told them that, you've obviously heard the talk, but I said that, okay, he doesn't speak. And I think I rattled off his diagnosis. And then I asked if, do you think he has an intellectual, I think a learning disability is what I asked, or a low IQ or something like that. And a majority of the audience raised their hands. First, they didn't, because I think they thought I was tricking them, which I kind of was. But then a majority of them. So that's like your immediate thing. All you have to say is the child doesn't speak and the child has Down syndrome or autism, and your image is formed already. Okay, so What have I told you? I mean, like what information have I given you in order for you to make this assumption? I have said that he has, an extra chromosome, but what do you know about it? So, or I said he's not speaking. What does that tell you? That he cannot speak, that his muscles, don't move, or whatever, his brain is not giving the signal to his mouth. What information have I given you that allows you to make this assumption about my son, that he is so, but you've already made that assumption and raised your hand. Not I was setting them up for it. So I was glad they did raise their hand. But that is that we're so stuck on external measures like appearance, and also IQ tests, which there was a quote by this like extremely awesome non-speaking autistic man, Ido Kedar, who talks about how it is for him to give an autistic IQ test. He talks about it's as though people, you're flashing lights at, your hands are in baseball mitts, and there's he actually has a really good blog talking about how non-speaking autistics are judged for intelligence. So I would his first name is Ido, IDO, and then Kedar is KEDAR. But that's what it is, that we're just setting up these like fake measures of intelligence, and we don't know that they're fake.
Right.
Wow. And we've built an entire education system on them in which we're supposed to raise all of our kids in a way that
They measure up to those standards.
Yeah.
The
fake standards. Oh, it's good stuff.
And I feel like we could just keep having this conversation for a long time, because I want to take this like to IEPs. I want to take this into all of our school settings, and but our hour is almost done here. But I am really excited. I feel like so much of what you said, Vaish, is just things that I need to ruminate on. Like, I need to really look at the way I'm engaging with Ace. I really need to look at the way that I am reading books with him, and even in the way that I am saying, okay, let's circle this word, and waiting for him to do what I tell him to do. This is just really blowing my mind. So we're so thankful for you joining us. And I do want to tell our audience to please go check out this TED Talk, because I think, and hopefully after you've heard the things that Vaish has had to say today, that you'll just jump right over there and give 12 minutes to it, because I think it really is something that, especially for parents, but also those listeners out there who are educators, I would love for all of the educators to be thinking beyond motor skills, and thinking about what does it mean to let our kids show us their intelligence before we put blockers up. So good. So I will go ahead and let us take a break. We'll jump over and hear from our sponsor. And then when we come back, do we have some good news today, you guys? We always have good news, right?
We always have good news.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. All right. Well, we will take a break and we will be right back.
Friends, we just got a new pair of Jonas Paul eyewear glasses in the mail recently for our Macy girl. Macy has been wearing Jonas Paul eyewear exclusively since she has needed glasses. They are our go-to. We absolutely love this brand. We love that Jonas Paul Eyewear is on a mission to help kids feel beautiful and confident in their glasses, which is exactly how Macy feels every time she puts her glasses on. Jonas Paul offers a home try-on kit. It costs just $1, and you get a variety of their different frames that you can try on at home. Your kids get to feel confident and adorable and check out the frame that they love the most. And once you've made a decision on the frames that you want for your child and that your child wants, you can get your prescription glasses starting at just $79, which includes prescription lenses. It's such a great deal. They also have blue light blocking lenses available, perfect for extra screen time and all of that online learning our kiddos are doing. So head over to jonaspaul.eyewear.com, and if you type in code the Lucky Few 15 at checkout, you will get 15% off just for listening.
Okay, we are still here with Sarathy. We are so excited because it's time for some good news up in the house.
Feeling good back news. The song. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Why is that?
It's been a long while.
There we go.
Yes, there we go.
I'll just work on that a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. It's good news time.
Yay.
I want to know if anybody has good news.
Yeah, go first.
Well, so Sid turned 13 last week, so he has insisted on having an Instagram and a Facebook account, but his vision is to demolish the idea that kids with Down syndrome have intellectual delays. But so he has now insisted on doing this through Instagram, and his account is called Down Like Sid, one word.
Yay.
So
love it.
yeah, so there, if you want to hear more from him, and I said that I don't know how long this will last. So it's kind of like he's just like he's 13 and probably.
I'm excited.
Yes. Can you say the name of the account one more time? Tell us his account.
Down like Sid.
Okay, thank you. Down like Sid. We will have a link to Down Like Sid. I'm on my phone right this second. There he is. Yes, we are gonna demolish that idea.
Demolish it.
I love that.
I feel like we need a
stand
new
with
slogan. Yeah. Shifting, demolishing narratives. We're not shifting things here.
Yeah, that's too sweet.
Okay, I talked about Macy swimming this summer, but without a floaty. But we went to a pool yesterday in August, got off his floaty and swam to the steps, and then swam to Josh and swam to the steps and swam to Josh. And just his like wanting to take his floaty off was a big deal. And then he was doing it. It was cute.
Woohoo!
Good news.
Awesome.
Oh.
Anyone else?
Do you have anything, Mercedes?
I do. I feel like Sunny is in the cusp of putting together sentences, and it's been super exciting. She's been doing like 2-word things like "go mom" to tell me she wants to leave the house, but now she's saying like "go mom beach," me, Rhodes, Shep. Like she'll name all of us, and then I will repeat back to her as if she were saying it to me and saying, "Mom, I want to go to the beach with my brothers." And so we're like practicing that, and I'm seeing her desire and the like puzzle pieces being put together of her like talking in a sentence, which I think is really super duper exciting.
Good news. I love it.
I will say that I feel like one of the ways that I'm seeing success for Ace is with motor planning and fine motor skills. And his teacher gave me this idea to put together some little, I forget what they're called, but like teaching boxes that you, so for instance, I took a little cardboard box and I cut a hole for balls, and I cut a square for his blocks, and then I cut this tiny slit for playing cards. And on the airplane, when we flew out to his grandma's house in Philadelphia, we sat there and he just put one playing card after another down this little slot in the box. And I felt really vindicated because my husband was like, "You're bringing a whole shoebox on the airplane."
Right. It's so unpractical, but so
unpractical. So, but I feel just excited to see the progress that he's making in being able to take something thin like that and get it into that space. So that's my good news. Good news.
My snaps.
That's huge news.
I know.
Woohoo.
Thanks, everybody. So that brings us to the end of this episode. We would love to have you on some other time, Vaish, to just go even deeper.
Yes.
So, but we are so thankful to have you today and last week, and just to hear from you. And again, we want to send our listeners over to your TED Talk and to your podcast, which would you share one more time the name of your podcast, your website, and where they can find you on Instagram?
My podcast is Functional Nutrition and Learning for Kids. And you can find that on iTunes or anywhere else that you hear podcasts. My website is functionalnutritionforkids.com.
Awesome.
And they can reach me at Vaish, VAISH, at functionalnutritionforkids.com. I'm on Instagram as Dr. Vaish Sarathy. That's Dr. Vaish, Sarathy. And my TEDx talk is called Who Decides How Smart You Are?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for the work you do. It's just so important and thought-provoking and helpful and different. I like that it's in the world for people to think about. It just makes you think about things so differently, which I think we need that more and more, especially in the disability community. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you all for inviting me. This was awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
The work you're doing is awesome.
I know. I'm excited to follow Sid
Yes, same.
And
Did.
I haven't listened to your podcast yet, so I'm doing that today.
Awesome.
Ooh, I like it.
I like it. All right. Well, we just want to remind our listeners out there that we would love to hear good news from you. And you can always leave us a voicemail. You can find our number on our website, theluckyfewpodcast.com. We would love for you to share good news about your loved one with Down syndrome. And you can also send us that by messaging us on Instagram at theluckyfewpod. If you have a product or a business that wants to help us shout the worth of people with Down syndrome, you know we'd love to partner with you. You can always email us at hello@theluckyfewpodcast.com for sponsorship opportunities. And as always, we want to send a huge thank you to our editor, Josh Avis, to our producer, Val Schleider, to our sponsor, and to all who have shared the Lucky Few podcast with friends or who have listened faithfully and cheered us on. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember that you, dear listeners, supporting your loved one with Down syndrome, you are a shouter of worth and a narrative shifter. So assume intelligence, get some functional nutrition up in here, and keep on keeping on. We are cheering for you. We'll see you next week on the Lucky Few podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Lucky Few Podcasts. Remember to review our show on Apple Podcasts and check us out on all social media at The Lucky Few Pod. Lastly, send us your good news by going to theluckyfewpodcast.com and sending us a message via text, voicemail, or email. See you next time.